Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me today, and welcome if you're new. So, I wanted to come on and commune in these really, really, really intense energies. I know a lot of us are feeling really, really pushed to the limit, which is interesting because I think a lot of the people that resonate with these videos are no strangers to intensity. We've been around the block and we've gone through a lot of trials and we've had our crunches and we've done our shadow work and all these things. But there's something about this energy right now that just, I've heard a lot of people say this and I feel the same way. It's like we've never felt anything like this. And so last week I was talking about, if you watched that video, I was talking because we've had a wildfire in the town now, in the town where I'm at. And so I was talking about this dream that I had that I identified as the energy of the fire. And so I was running uphill and this like huge wave of energy was coming behind me and I was always sort of like one step ahead of it and stuff. And I was relating that to not only the fire but to the ascension wave, these energies that are coming in, these activating energies. And of course fire being the element of activation and of alchemy and of consuming and clearing and all these things. So I've been journeying with this fire the last 2 weeks, and it's mostly out now. Our monsoons have started, the rains have come, and so it's shifting gears. The energy is shifting now, which I also feel is related. So we'll see what comes up around that, just because everything's collective, and when you're really tuned into collective energies and you're in that like sort of expanded consciousness, then whatever's going on in your life is a fractal, and you can really read the collective energies in that way. Okay, so that's why I often share my personal stories, because I know they're fractals. They're fractals with a larger energy. So anyway, the fire is in our forest, and it's like 12 miles from our town, and I'm right in the town. I'm kind of like on the edge, but I'm right in the town. And the mountains are to the north of me. So right out my front door, I can see the mountains. So I would see the fire, and sometimes I would see the flames. And so I'm just like journeying with the fire in that way. But also I sleep with my head to the north, like facing the mountains. And so at night, what I was finding beyond that dream that I shared, if you watch that video, some nights I would just lay awake at night, and I was in that liminal space, and I was just journeying with the energy and what felt like the consciousness of fire. And so in that dream, one of the things that I didn't mention, I had kind of forgot until I met the fire later in that liminal space, is there was like this swirl over here. It was like right over here, and I looked back, and it was almost like a spiral, and in the center of the spiral was like this. It wasn't like an eye, but it like represented like the consciousness of that being, like the consciousness of the fire. So later, when I was sleeping and I was and I was feeling that energy, I was feeling that consciousness again, and feeling like how, because it was a huge fire, it was almost 50,000 acres, and it was just like raging, and we're in, I think, one of the greatest droughts in the country, if not the greatest. And so just like a timber box, and so a lot of fire. I've never been that close to that much raw power and that much raw firepower. And so there's medicine in that, and there's a transmission, and there's, and we have all of these elements and things inside of ourselves. So it was like, and you couldn't get away from it. I could go to the rivers many times and take as many showers and baths as I wanted, but I couldn't douse that fire energy that was just everywhere. And then the smoke, the smoke went the whole way down to the border. It was like one big smudge stick, right? The forest on fire. So like clearing and clearing and clearing, but you were in the activation, you were in the clearing, and it feels so symbolic and representative of the energy that we're in right now. And so in that dream, I was running up this hill, and I was thinking like, wow, if this were real, like this fire that I would, well, I didn't think of it as fire in the dream, but I was like, I would be consumed, and I would allow myself to be consumed. And so that's where I feel we're at right now. Like we're in the fire and we're being consumed. And so like leading up to the solstice, it was almost like, ooh, that compression, and kind of feeling the heat. It's a little edgy, and now it's just, yeah, it's like we're on the pyre. We're on the pyre being burned. But this time, and kind of that was coming up in that last reading too, with the symbolism of the hawk and the crow, and some of those things, those messages that were coming through for me, but also for all of us, as a reader for the collective, that it might look bad, but it's not. It's not so bad. It's like for you. So that this time versus the other times we might have been burned on a pyre, we're not dying. We're purifying. The old patterns are dying, and same thing with nature. And that's what felt really, really clear to me was just one of the things that had happened for me before, and I think for a lot of us as well. For me, the timing of before and during this fire was a lot of unveiling and a lot of memories coming back online, but also it just felt like a divine timing where a lot of the veils were coming off, where we were able to see. And so I've been talking about this since that eclipse in March, more and more of the distortions and how we've been leaking energy to the distortions and how we've been feeding the very system. And I think it was that last reading I was talking about that, like the different ways that we're feeding the very system that's enslaving us, not really realizing. So a lot of clarity and veils coming off around that in more and more subtle ways, and seeing it in every corner of society, the hijack and the overlay. I was even seeing, I'm not clairvoyant, I'm more clairaudient and the gnosis and the feeling, but seeing third eye, seeing the overlays in nature, a few weeks before the fire started. And it was like just like seeing and feeling more and more, and just kind of that sick in my stomach feeling of like, oh my gosh, like you just can't get away from this, and like really wanting to be vigilant about all the ways that I was still leaking energy, even if that meant I had to kind of withdraw from everything, and be that weirdo, be that weirdo, because some of us, if you can see it and you can do it, then it's part of your role. And I think that's what a lot of us are doing. So those of us that are on that sort of like threshold of seeing behind the curtain, and of course we've all been awakening and going through levels of deconditioning, for the last however many years. For me, it's been about 10 years of that. But this last level, and I keep saying this, where it's like you see another level, you see another veil, you see another way that you're leaking, but this last one just felt like being in the fire, where everything just kind of blasted open, like illumination, and it felt like too much too fast, too much too fast. I'm falling apart now, but it was that divine timing, and I knew that because there are no mistakes. And it's like, and like I said in that last reading, I'm not somebody that pushes and tries to force things. It's like I let things come, and if they want to come slow, they can come slow. And this time it came really fast, and so the intensity in that. So that also representing this energy where whether we're aware of it and we're tracking it, I'm a decoder. I notice patterns. I always have, and I like to decode with others. And so that's kind of how I am. And I've mentioned that before. But even if you're not like that, we're still all being hit with this unveiling. And so even if it's not conscious, it's like there are things falling off and falling away and illuminating kind of, on a cellular level, or maybe a little bit off the radar, but we're still going through it, and it can make us feel like we're going crazy. And so that's something that's been going on for me. And I remembered this dream that I had, and I had it because it's like we're expanding into more of ourselves, more of the truth of reality, more of what's possible. And at the same time that we're expanding, things are falling off, at the exact same time. And so it's kind of like that fire and water, which there's a lot of fire and water energy right now, where I'm at with the fire, but then also the monsoons. And now we have to be careful of flooding on the burn scars and that kind of thing. And so, and we had this huge downpour the other night, and which is typical here, with the monsoons in New Mexico, just if you live in the desert, then you know what the monsoons are like, right? But we had this like 30 to 40 minute rolling thunder. And I was in the middle of a session, which does not seem like an accident, because nothing's an accident. Everything's connected. And it was a very powerful session with a very powerful woman and her partner. They're like true divine counterparts, and really, really kind of working these energies of weaving things together and clear. But what I saw in her was just this profound like oracle, this profound like, her heart and her womb were so intact, where she just had this, but like a lot of us, it's like, when you see and and you feel, it's like, you're out on an edge that can make you feel a little insane, and so right during like one of the like biggest clearings and alignments, in that session, this rolling thunder started, and it went on for like 30 or 40 minutes, and which I wasn't like tuned into it because I was in the session, but I heard a lot of people talking about it, and a lot of us never hearing anything like that before. And whatever it was, whatever influences were in that, it was that divine timing and that synchronicity with like the putting out of the fire, the putting out, the liberation, the releasing of the hijack, the releasing of the overlays, in this area, but this is going on all over the world, whether it's going on through earth catastrophe or through social catastrophe, war, there's this huge unraveling and this huge releasing going on behind the scenes, no matter what it looks like. And that was very clear. And then that happening in the session exactly when, her overlays were coming off and that goddess, like crystalline energy coming online. And same thing with the forest, with Mother Nature, and, again, all around the world, and connected to the ley lines, where these different spots are having these clearings, releasing the ley lines, releasing our memories. So, just a lot, and that's just the snippet that I can see and understand. And of course, we were talking 2 readings ago about that galactic node point, where a lot of those galactic timelines are reunifying and collapsing, and even some of those groups, those lower groups, leaving because time is up and the rise is here. And so, really, at this stage in the game, even though we're revisiting some horrible things from the past, wars, all these things, that's like at this point in human evolution, we can't forget that bigger context, that this is when the rise is happening. This is when the illumination and the unveiling is happening in everything that's happening in our personal lives, in our communities, in the nature around us, in the world, on the world stage, and galactically is one movement. We're all part of the same symphony, and so it's all connected to this awakening and this rise, no matter what it looks like. And sure, there's a polarity. Again, we're always talking about the 2 sides of the same coin. There's the other side polarity that wants to hook you into those traumas and hook you into the things that are releasing, because the natural movement is like you get triggered and then you release, and if you have both your fire and your water intact, you release it through the fire, the alchemy, and you surrender through the water, and you allow it to flow through you. You allow that intensity, you allow that emotion to move. You don't fixate on it and create a story, like, we all do it at times, where it's like, oh God, now I'm going backwards and I worked so hard and now I'm like 5 years old again, and like, guess the truth of reality is that I really am a fucking loser, that kind of thing. And it's like, wait, hold on, and there's all this energy to pull us back into re-traumatizing ourselves in these energies, and keeping that loop going. But that remembrance of the power of fire and water. And in Vedic astrology, that's that Gandanta point, where it's like, you don't know how you're going to put those 2 together. And yet that's where, that's where the alchemy happens. That's where you break on through that threshold to the other side. And so I think I had like 2 or 3 other things that I was starting to say that I didn't quite finish, but I just remembered, something else that I wanted to say, and that was around a dream that I had, and it was during another, that's what I was saying, because like we're expanding, right? We're expanding into more of ourselves, more into the truth of the reality, the things falling off, and so we reach these threshold points, and you might recognize this energy from other times in your life where you've expanded or you've stepped through a boundary or a border. That, and some of us, we might only do that, like, we might only be doing it now at this like shift of the ages, and some of you might have done it many times. Some of us have many incarnations in this one lifetime, where you just you make that jump. You make that jump on the other side. So I was talking about that last time with 3 years ago with the hawk, and that last time I was in the threshold energy, and how I recognized that this was a collective threshold, and because it's the same energy, okay. And so around that time I had this dream, and in this dream I was in this nature area, and it was like a state park or something like that. And so it had like this boundary, this border, and you couldn't go outside of the border. The border was there for a reason. But the way it felt in the dream is like outside of that fence, outside of that border, like nobody had ever gone. So you didn't know if there were like tigers or like acid rain, or like you didn't know what was on the other side of there, because nobody had gone there. And I was standing by the fence, and I wanted to go there. I was like, because I was sleeping there. It was almost like, we were, maybe it was like an Armageddon thing, I don't know, but it didn't feel like particular. Anyway, we were sleeping in this park, or I was sleeping in this park, but I wanted to be away from the people. I wanted to go, even though it was a national park, there were a lot of people there. I wanted to go farther out. I really wanted to go there, but I didn't know if it was safe, and I was just like lingering on that fence and just thinking of all the like bad things could potentially happen. And I knew that was a threshold dream, and I knew it's like we're expanding into territory within our own psyches, and perhaps within the entire collective psyche, like those of us on that cutting edge that are really really feeling this crunch, like where you almost feel like you're going insane, like mental instability. Like there have been a few moments where I've been like, this is the kind of energy where people go on medication. Like this is like, I had a moment where I was like, is this it for me? Have I lost it? Is this it? Is there any coming back from this? And it's like, no, there's no coming back from this. You can't go backwards and not be on the threshold you're on. You got to keep going. You got to keep going, and you got to keep trusting, and you got to go through that fire, through that Gandanta point, using the water of surrender and the fire of that alchemy to burn off all those programs. And you're at that threshold, and you're feeling insane and crazy and dysfunctional. I really had to pull back my energy from the town and everything, and like less on social media. Like I can share stuff, but I can't scroll too much, because it's like, first of all, it's just information overload, and like my nervous system is just doing the best that it can. But also it's like any amount of like merging with a frequency that like if that is not yet at the threshold that you're at can feel like really really awful, first of all. But it's almost like your soul screams out, where it's like, no, like keep going, like don't first of all, if you go backwards it's gonna feel awful. Like if you step yourself down in any way to sort of like stay in resonance or in frequencies with people and energies and things that you might be outgrowing, and you're outgrowing in this moment because you're expanding into new territory. And once you stabilize that expansion, then most likely you'll be able to go back into those things or be around those things and not have it feel like a siren going off inside your being. But that siren is like, no, it's important, you need to expand, because if you're able to cross over that threshold and you're feeling it, you need to go so that you can stretch that limit for the rest of humanity. It's like those of us on the edge, we're doing it for all of us. So it's like you might feel like you're abandoning people, or like you're shutting people out, but it's like you're doing that for them, because you have to keep going, you have to go the whole way through. So as long as I was still kind of like interacting or woven into the town, when I was going through my other thresholds, I was very very isolated, and I just because I've had many of them. And so I was just, I was like a recluse, and I was also healing from a lot of trauma and stuff like that. So it's just, I wasn't integrated in the town at all. And I had been like that for a long time. So it was just normal for me, no big deal. But the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been in the town, and I've been off. I mean, I was always like doing energy work and stuff, but people would come to me. So it was like I didn't have to leave my house, but now I'm like downtown, and I was reading at the shop, and I was just like meeting all these people, and it was fine. It's just kind of where I was at. But now I'm on a threshold again, and it's like I cannot keep doing that. And so I was like, and that's part of what was making me feel insane, is because I need to like honor, and I think a lot of us are feeling this way. I've heard other people say similar. Just pulling back to honor this time so you can stabilize in the expansion that you're going through. And for me, that really helped. I mean, I still feel kind of insane, especially at night. I'm kind of just like, oh my gosh. And so my mantra has been, and I've said this before in readings, the crazier the better, the crazier the better. And I had this conversation with somebody who was saying the same things. It's like, when if you feel insane, that you're clearing programs, and they're leaving you. And the thing is we have a sense of security and groundedness in the programs that we've been in our limitations. It's like they make us feel safe. They give us a container. And when we start to expand outside of them, there's no container. It's like we're in the spiral. But that spiral is the truth of reality, So it's like we're acclimating and getting used to having that flight and having that freedom and having our codes back and having our memories back and having all of it. But at this point, it can just feel really ungrounded and really insane. And then at the same time, there are all these emotions coming up and old feelings, and like the fear around the threshold, the fear of what's on the other side. Even if we don't register it as that fear is kicking up survival issues, it's kicking up insanity issues, it's kicking up safety issues, because other times we weren't allowed to expand and remember. We were institutionalized, we were killed, we were burned, we were hanged, we were imprisoned. We were trapped in whatever way. We were put into slavery, all these things. So those memories are coming up as we step over that threshold. So we have to kind of feel and clear all those things. But again, leaning into the elements has been really helpful to me. I really had no choice because I was in it. And so it was just part of the medicine that I got from this fire, where just becoming that fire and becoming like, it's like, feeling that much power and that much unstoppability, it's like I couldn't get away from it. So like we often want to run from our alchemies, or we want to run from our thresholds because they're really uncomfortable. And sometimes we do run. We might run by going back to the old patterns, or addictions, or going into hanging out with people that just kind of take the edge off for us in whatever way. But at a certain point, I think we're at that point, we can't do that anymore. We have to go the whole way through. And that's what the fire showed me. Like, you cannot get away from me. Like, I am so big, and I'm going to burn until I'm done. I am going to burn until I'm done. And that's how it is with our passages too. We're going to burn until we're done. And the more we can bring in that water element of surrender and flow, because we know that the water is the antidote to the fire. The water puts out the fire, but when it comes to alchemy, the water is what puts out the fire by allowing the fire to have its place. It's like the water represents our surrender and our receptivity to the activations and the purges. And right now it's really intense. And you can feel like you're busting at the seams, or like you're going crazy, or like you're just not going to make it, or just the kind of that breakdown energy. But just knowing that that's when you're really in it. That's when you're making the most progress, and just feeling that fire energy and envisioning it. And that's I didn't have to do that because I was in it, because it was all around me. But now that the fire's over, it's like I'm using that as a tool, to invoke that flame, and just sit in it and say yes to it, rather than squirm. And the yes is the water. The yes is the water. The surrender is the water. So you have them both together. That's that Gandanta point. That's that alchemy. That's where we break on through these thresholds. So really, really being in it, really, really being in it right now. So let me see if there's anything else that is coming off the top of my head. I'm not thinking anything else. So I think I'm going to move into the cards and see how that guides us. The other thing that I wanted to say actually is just that I really, really appreciate the communing of consciousness in these readings. And I had mentioned this before, how one time I was doing a reading and I forgot to press record, or the record didn't work. And I was so I felt like I was talking to the air, and I couldn't find my words. And so one of the things that you might notice in your own life, so this is something that's been coming up for me a lot lately, because I've really been kind of busting through and on this edge. And I find that when I speak to people, it's like I can't find my words unless I'm speaking with people who are also on that edge. They're also on that edge, because it's like if people aren't in resonance with that frequency, I can't speak, and then my throat closes up, or I might say weird things, or I don't say it in the right way, and then that can kick up some of those old emotions of I'm weird, and like what the hell's wrong with me, and shame, and just feeling left out, and all these things, these really, really old feelings that I haven't felt in a really long time. But again, it's about that threshold moment. But you find that you can't speak. Okay, so when I did that recording where it wasn't recording, I couldn't speak. And so what I realized from that, because in these readings, I can speak, and I would think oh, it's because you're sitting in your house and there's nobody there to give you a weird look or anything like that. But when it wasn't recording, I couldn't speak either, so it's I really learned that I'm absolutely feeling your consciousness on the other side of my sharings and of this transmission that's coming through. And it's what's coming through is connected to your consciousness, and that telepathic field that I'm tuning into, in that no time space, in that quantum field beforehand. It's we're already there in council together in consciousness, communing, and it's I'm just putting words to it. I'm doing my role as the oracle or the speaker here, but it's our collective consciousness, our high priestess, crystalline codex, whatever words you want to use, consciousness, that so many of us that commune in these videos, and such an amazing group of people. And I'm so honored to be connecting with you, and that you make time to for these readings, because it really is, I'm speaking you as well. It's I'm speaking our consciousness. So I really wanted to say that, because I'm really appreciative. I'm really appreciative for the collaboration, and for the one mind that we're sharing, for the one mind that I'm tuning into when I do these readings. So it's as I'm speaking, it's you're speaking. You're speaking through me. Your higher self and your oracle self is speaking through me as well. And I feel in communing over these things, we really are anchoring energy, and I can feel it. I can feel the energy anchoring, and I can feel the acknowledgement of these subtleties and of these things that we know and that we feel, just help stabilize that field. So I've been seeing a lot of fours lately. 444 was my number, for a while, and then it's always switching around. But lately, it's been a lot of the 444 again, and I always felt fours as well. Since that last threshold 3 years ago, they were coming through for me as safety and stabilization, of course, with the fours, the four legs of the table, you're nice and steady, and also the angelic and the support and safety. But lately, it's been coming through for me as the frequency and the energy of this higher timeline, of the new earth template that we're building and we're anchoring. And so again, the four, the anchoring, the stabilizing. And so anyway, just so grateful for the team of you that is connecting with me and these readings, through these readings, or through Facebook, or on Messenger, or just through the posts. And some of you that I've connected through YouTube as well, or that I know in the town that are just deep kindred soul sisters that listen through YouTube, or however it lands, just the group of us that's doing this just in the telepathic network a lot of the time as well. So just wanted to say that and honor that, because I was really feeling that so viscerally this morning. So let's see what this card is for our overall energy. Life is speeding up. I got this card the other day too. I think I got it yesterday, and I shuffled these cards really well because I had a feeling I was going to get a lot of the same cards, and I didn't want to be tempted to think like, oh, it just fell out because it was, loose or whatever. So there it is again. Life is speeding up, isn't it? It's like the quickening. A couple weeks ago, I was just feeling a whisper of the quickening, and now we're in it. We're on fire. And there's that too again, that collaboration. Again, that reminder that we are doing this together. There is a team of us out on the edge, pushing the edge and being pushed to the edge. So, like I was saying last time, like like the being pushed out over the edge where we need to go. That's absolutely definitely going on. But for all of humanity, pushing through that threshold, pushing through that lack, that limitation, those boundaries, those hijacks, those on all the really deep different levels. So the Seven of Cups. So the Seven of Cups, that is that sort of like liminal space, that imaginal space, that thinking about what you want, feeling into what you want, feeling into what's the right next action for you. And I think there is a lot of that, because again, if we've been pushed out over that edge, and we're in the spiral, and we're kind of like tumbling through space where it's like, we were used to the false anchors, and now we're acclimating to that freedom. That's very much the energy of this, where it's like you're I mean, in a sense, that space can be kind of scary, because you might not know what you want in this space. Like right now, we're just kind of contending to that void feeling of having a lot falling away, and having all the emotions, and just being sort of in that threshold energy, but also in this space. And that's interesting, because in sessions, I often notice it's like, there are certain areas when you feel somebody clearing, through the lungs, or through the knees, which is where I feel the Akashic energy, or through back here is where I feel the ancestral sort of collective programming, conditioning type of energy. You can tell, I can feel when somebody's in the process of clearing, when they're in the beginning of the clearing, or when they're in the middle, or when they're almost to the end. But then at a certain point, when you've done a lot of clearing, it'll feel like a portal. It'll feel like a portal where you start to receive. And when you're towards the very end of your clearing, you can feel both. You can feel the last strikes, and you can feel that portal energy coming in. So this is what this is reminding me of right now, with this quickening, where there's so much pushing through, and there's so much that's so intense, but we're reaching the bottom of the barrel. We're reaching those dregs where that sort of quantum access to more is also possible, where you start receiving more of your higher gifts, or more of what you've earned throughout your soul's journey, where more of you is coming in, and where you're able to sense. So this is just an encouraging message, and just a little bit of guidance, because I think we really are sort of on, a lot of us in that sort of emotional soup, and again, the waters, and there's a lot swirling around. You can't tell what's what, but remembering that in that same space, in that exact same space, again, the two sides of the coin, where there's sort of that breakdown. The breakdown is also the breakthrough, and the breakthrough is where we can receive more. So sort of tuning. I remember hearing somebody saying something about today that was related to breakthroughs. I think it was a Mercury thing or something like that, but breakthroughs. So regardless of whether you follow astrology or not, or you're plugged into that or not, I am feeling that in the energy, just things kind of like a shift from what we've been in, where there's been I think a lot of emotion, a lot of water, a lot of intensity, and kind of, the water can drown you. The water can drown you. You can feel like you can't breathe. There were a couple times where I felt like I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't breathe. I felt that compression, almost like a little bit of a energy of panic. And so there's that type of energy with the water, but as it starts to ease up and dry up, and then the positive, the more sort of like balanced element of water is that psychic space and that intuitive space where you're feeling, you're feeling what's coming in, what's coming in for you. There was something else I was going to say there and I kind of lost it, but it'll probably might come back. So I'm going to move on. The Page of Wands. Okay, so this very much is about a new adventure. We are moving into a new adventure. It's been really, really intense. It's been really, really intense. And again, like that, so this is kind of representing as that threshold, that Gandanta point for me, where it's like it can feel like madness. And that's the thing, like when you have, like I have a Gandanta point in my Vedic chart, and it has to do with my Mars. And so what I had learned about that is like people with that, and then of course astrology, there's all kinds of hijacks in astrology as well, and especially I notice in Vedic astrology where there's so much like doom and gloom, and like you got to do all these things to mitigate your karma, and like to me it just feels like another trap. I think like as we've evolved and as we've sort of like stepped out a bit, people can interpret things and do it through more of their intuition and more of that higher consciousness and that awakening consciousness. But there is something too when you have a really crunchy situation, it can kind of take you down. Like the difference between a madman and a medicine man, both of them go into the dark. One gets lost in it, one comes out, so a bit of that kind of energy going on, like where I was like, oh, this is kind of like medication time zone, and it's like, no, just keep going, because in that same portal of breakdown and, psychosis, or, whatever it is, that like real tremble where you're like, oh, this is making me nervous. In that same space is that portal, and is that quantum space where you break on through the other side. The breakdown is the breakthrough. You break on through the other side into this new adventure. So this really being highlighted along with this, of that quickening, of that, like, even though it's water, it's like we're in the fire, that rolling energy that was chasing me up the hill. It's like whether it's a tsunami or a wildfire or whatever it is, it's a strong energy that consumes us, that we have to navigate, and the navigating of it without losing we are losing our minds, and that's like, again, the crazier the better. You're losing your mind. That means you're losing the program, you're losing the hooks, and you got to kind of be in that washer a little bit and be all tumbled around and disoriented, but you are going to dry out. And now we're back to the wands and the fire and the Page of Wands, where you're on this new adventure. So basically, it's like the message of like, just hang in there and hold in there and have that higher perspective. Know that in this same space is that quantum access to more of yourself. It is a threshold energy, and right on the other side of that is this new adventure, and that's what it's about. But it's like, just to reiterate that again, it's like we have to sit in the fire. We have we can't outrun the energy. We can't because when we outrun that energy, we're outrunning our own souls. We're outrunning the return of our own higher consciousness, of the truth of reality, of full access to that which has been kept and kept from us. And we've been playing that game for eons, and this is the time where we're breaking free. And so it's just not, our souls aren't going to let us outrun it anymore. And maybe the different ways that we might have taken the edge off, or, been able to distract ourselves, they're not working. So we just have to sit in that fire, or sit in that hurricane, or sit in that volcano, or, Mother Earth is doing the same thing. She's just letting it all out, because it's just what needs to be happening right now. And even though it's scary, and even though it triggers trauma memories of cataclysm and of death, of insanity, of persecution, even though it's triggering all of that is clearing off in a way as well. So we have to be willing to sit in the tremble, to sit in the fire, to just be, and to think of it as elements is helpful, because there's a lot of activity all around us, and just letting it happen. The more we can surrender, the more we can surrender to it. Even if you feel absolutely batshit crazy and you just need to cry or writhe or be up all night or whatever it is, just know that's where the juice is. That's where That's where it's happening. And then on the other side of that, it's like a portal. You know, see this? It's like a portal. And this is kind of the energy of the world card in a lot of decks, where you have all this around you. It's like, you know, you're walking through to something. You're walking through to this new adventure. So that might be very encouraging, especially if you're watching this video at a time where you're feeling that tremble, where you're like, oh God, you know what the fuck is going on? Because it's almost like two different dimensions, you know. And I'm vacillating between, like, when I'm out in nature or I'm in my home. Like, my home is my sanctuary. I've been here for 18 years. I've done a lot of healing with myself and others in this home. It has a really amazing energy. Everything in here is like a reflection of my soul. Every time I go through a jump, I change things around. It's like I've worked the energy. It's like I've created and earned a sanctuary in my life, you know. So I can feel a lot of like bliss and peace, and that is my reflection. But then, like, on a dime, like one little thing can happen, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, there you are. So it's like different dimensional frequencies, and it's like what we're clearing is fourth dimensional consciousness. We're clearing the overlays, we're clearing the hijacks, we're clearing the programs, we're clearing the traumas, we're clearing the ways that we've divided within ourselves, and that's the other thing. So I was communing with somebody this morning, and we were talking about the war within us, how we're both feeling that we have this war within the places that you've turned on yourself, or you've gotten the message from your external hologram that you were bad or wrong, or, you know, whatever it is, where you just, and that's the running away from what's coming now, which is the reunification. Is like, this energy is trying to take us back home, but we have a lot of patterns of turning away from ourselves, which is turning away from these energies, because these energies do represent that unity and that unification with ourselves, with all that is, with that. And it's big, you know. Again, that's the portal. That's the portal and that quantum access to all that is, you know. But we've ran from it. We've turned away. Our polarities got separated, and then that was part of the fall, and part of the hijack, and part of the overlay, and all of society, and every little corner encouraging you to continue to battle, whether it's battling, you know, somebody else or some political ideology or another country or whatever it is, you know. It's like, or your partner or your own intuition. So a lot of like that, like, especially as we expand across thresholds and we move into new territory, and that feeling of I'm crazy, and like, well, I better like tone it down. I better go backwards a little bit. But at this point, we can't. We have to go over that cliff. We're being summoned and called into this, like, time's up for the running. But the really good news about that is also, like, we're ending war. We're ending war because we're ending the war within ourselves. We're ending the abandonment of our intuition, the abandonment of ourselves, the abandonment of, so every time we fall into victim, and every time we fall into blame, and every time we fall into that shouldn't have happened, the truth of reality is this beautiful symphony of all these things, and that clockwork of everything being a part of the one being, you know, a part of all that is, the law of one. And so to separate anything out as wrong or bad or against you is dividing, being at war with your psyche, at war with the truth of reality. And then therefore our outer reflection is going to be war. So I think it's really interesting that a lot of us are going through this, or at least enough of us are going through this quickening and this crunch right when there's a war on the horizon. You know, it's like, and that's a catalyst as well. You know, it's like so I think, I don't know if I finished this thought, but how, like, we have the catalyst, the natural movement of awakening is we have a catalyst, and then that catalyst gets us to feel things, and then we use the water element to surrender to that and to allow it to flow through, and then we clear those things, and then we expand. But there are so many little hijacks on that process where we feel something, and then we hook back into our old patterns of shaming ourselves and abandoning ourselves or blaming somebody else, or, you know, that kind of thing, where we get stuck in the alchemy. So the beautiful thing about this intensity, again, you know, two sides of the same coin, is that we really can't get out of it. We really can't, because it's just going to keep coming and coming and coming until we go the whole way through that portal and out the other side into this new adventure. But because it's so intense, it can kick up even more trauma. You know, it can kick up stuff, because it's like what I was saying, like, it was like almost like the unveiling for me was too much, too fast, and I felt a little traumatized from it. But I was like, well, you know, but that's not wrong, right? No victim, no wrong. It's like, that's happening right now for a reason, because it's time. And so we need that crunch. We need that crunch that triggers us the whole way through, and we even need to drown in those triggers a little bit, to drown in that, so that we surrender. Again, the fire, the consuming, the eating us up, burning us up, and then the emotion and the breakdown in the water, and the water puts the fire out, and that's that Kundanta point where we move through that threshold. So it's like, yeah, just welcoming the intensity and welcoming the breakdown, and knowing that that's just how it has to happen. And what's happening is really, really, really huge, because every one of us that goes through that breakdown and that breakthrough is dissolving war consciousness within our individual beings, and we're contributing to, because our outer reflection it's a reflection. It's a reflection of what we're holding within our consciousness. So the collective, enough of the collective consciousness is holding that warring within themselves that we have war without. That's all it is. So we can go, be mad or petition or, blame or, whatever, as much as we want, but we have the power to do something about it. And again, that meme that's going around on Facebook with David Hawkins and like one person who's, I forget how he said it, like maybe in Heart Coherence, but another way of saying, unified within their own field is more powerful than 750,000 people. I think that's what it was that aren't. So you think about that. It doesn't take that many. So those of us that are on this threshold, and I think that's a lot of you that are resonating with these videos, and if you're new, then you were guided, because we're here, right? We're here. And so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so just being that anchor, and how important it is to be that anchor if you're called to be. And I think that's like a lot of us needing to pull back our energy, and again, not mingling with frequencies that are still in that warring energy, because it kind of knocks you off your mission. Like, it's really important that you go this whole way if you're being called to do that, because it's again, it's structuring that water. It's like you're purifying 750,000 people. You're stabilizing that many people, and enough of us doing that, we're changing the collective frequency to move out of this. And it's more important now than ever with what's going on. And we could say that in a fear-based way of like, oh my gosh, we're on the brink of nuclear war. But it's like, yeah, but that's the catalyst. That's the catalyst that's getting us to do this, remember? Because it's all God, it's all one thing. And so we can't really fail at it, because even like me, like what I was talking about, when I would be in situations that weren't in the direction of this edge, then my like sirens would go off, and I'd feel so uncomfortable, like I wanted to die, until I finally pulled back my energy. And then it was like, okay, good, now you don't have to feel it anymore. Now you can just continue to do this work for all of us, and so yeah, I think a lot of the intensity can be, aside from just feeling it, it can be exaggerated by just if we're ignoring that call to really hold vigil in this space. And so I was talking about that, I think, the last reading too, and that was sort of more specific to the energy of that specific event that weekend. But now it's just kind of nonstop, so it's like really, really yeah, again, the quickening, the quickening, and it just keeps exponentially going. So it's like, again, we can't get out of it. We need to honor it, and we need to go the whole way through if that's your job and that's your calling, so that we can shift this. Some people, like with the fire, I was like, wow, all the firemen and firewomen, and there were the people doing the planes with the dropping the stuff, that helps. And then I forget what they call it. And then the people digging the trenches, and the people with the dozers, and then the people like even like covering up the dozer tracks so it doesn't mess up the forest and the paths, and all these things. And then there were the people that would come and talk to the people on the updates, and everybody had their different role. And then there were the people that were being evacuated, and those people that had their alchemy, and they had to confront, like, well, what do I want to bring? Like, what's important? What would I be okay leaving behind? And that whole deep process that some people's souls called to do as part of this process, and all of this being connected to awakening, and some of us, doing that real deep inner work of unifying from our, on a really deep level, from all the places that we're rejecting ourselves and abandoning ourselves. So we have the mystics, we have the oracles, we have the alchemists, everybody doing the alchemy on whatever level they are. We have the firefighters, we have the, people, but it's like all of us were working on this alchemy. All of us were working on this clearing, on this purification of calcification. So we have, I had mentioned before, we're on the 33rd ley line. Another area of the fire that was evacuated is in the 108 ley line, that connects with the Egyptian pyramids, that connects with Chaco Canyon, which connects with the Anasazi. So there's all these things. The native, we have a lot of Apache energy here layered in the land. We have slavery of women out on the 108 ley line. We have we have Masons. That was like the seed point of this town. So there's all these different levels of, enslavement or hijack, and you can feel it, and that's part of the overlays that I have been seeing in the area, and even on the nature. It's just, there's just this overlay of like dark energy, coming through, and it all got purified at the same time that humanity is getting purified, at the same time that like wherever else in the world is having, earth catastrophes, or hurricanes, or the volcanoes, or the large earthquakes, or all these things, and the different ways that we're all participating in this clearing, whether we're taking one for the team by doing that deep, hard, emotional, psychic inner work, or we're taking one for the team by dying, or we're taking one for the team by losing everything, we're taking one for the team by having the threat of losing everything, but all of it being part of this grand symphony, because again, this is a very, very long game that we're playing, and if you haven't come, if it isn't right timing yet, it hasn't been right timing yet for you to unlock those galactic memories, the galactic history, and just putting it out there that's how far back and far out it goes. And so again, zooming out, because we can look at just what's going on, and but what are we looking at it through? We're looking at it through the framework that we've been conditioned to look at everything through, and all of that is loosening up. So it can feel kind of crazy, but just knowing that, things are purifying and reorganizing on all of those levels. We might be looking here, but remember that it's also here, and it's also here, and it's also here, and it's also here. And when you can read the fractals, you can see the same patterns, and then you can get a clear perspective that this is about purification, that this is about an unveiling and a liberation, liberating that which has held us either in our consciousness and our programming, where we then hold down ourselves in the ley lines, as one area frees, it frees, and it connects with all the other ley lines. It connects with the earth grid, just like us, with the way our energy runs in our bodies, or the way it connects, with the galaxy. It's all fractals of the same thing. And so just this huge energy of liberation, so that's with this as well, where you're honing in through that quantum space, where you're feeling into what you want, what we want that's been hijacked and corralled. We were talking about this in the last reading, hijacked and corralled into places that still feed the very systems that's been trying to and has been enslaving us for eons, off planet and on planet. What we actually want is unity and peace, and we do that within ourselves. We do that within ourselves through that self-love and through that self-acceptance, and healing those childhood wounds, and healing, what is coming up for this lifetime. And if it happens to connect you farther back with other lifetimes or with galactic things, then fine. And if not, doesn't matter, because it's like, the portal, you are where you are, and the portal connects with it all anyways, and you don't really need to know about it, but to just be present with what is, to be present with what is. And I also want to say, if you are in town here, or if you're nearby, I'm in Silver City, New Mexico, I am available for support. The energy sessions have been so profound, and it's like the tarot card readings. If you would like a tarot card reading, that's really helpful too, because we do move energy through the cards, because it's the same thing. Reading energies, it gets very multidimensional and quantum, so we are moving energy. But in the sessions, we're literally moving energy, and we're balancing polarities, and we're working right in your field. So just please know that I am available for support. I'm pulling back my energy in terms of, I'm not going to be down at Mystic that much for walk-ins. I'm just doing 2 hours, 1 day a week. But I'm taking a little break, but I am doing appointments, and that way I can just go down, and I want to read for the serious people who really want to move energy and really want to move through the blocks and move into this new. So doing that through appointment, and I can just meet you down there if you're in this town or you're nearby and you want to come here. Anytime that the shop hours are open, and then the sessions I do out of my home here in my portal, in my sanctuary, and so it was so powerful with that woman the other day, that woman and her beautiful partner, and we were there right in that rain, and that changing rain with that rumbling thunder. One other thing I wanted to say, somebody was saying about, he's like a psychic mystic person, does readings and stuff, and he was saying that when we asked about it, that the thunder was also a frequency. It was also a frequency, and like a breaking up, like a breaking up. It was part of, it was like the skies version. We had the fire, we had the water, and then we had the air, in a way doing its part for the clearing. And I thought that was really beautiful and felt so resonant, just the frequency and breaking up the patterns, breaking up the structure. So I have a friend, a lot of us have Hathor connections with our throat and our voice. In fact, I have waiting in my inbox, and I cannot wait to listen, a transmission that a woman did, a friend of mine, through her voice, and it's connected to the earth, and it's connected to the natives. And so there's that healing energy as well. You know, this has been coming up a lot lately as well, the healing energy of our voices, of our toning, of our speech. This morning, when I sat down to do this reading, the light was coming in here and my whole throat chakra was lit up. And then I was like, oh, I'm hungry. And, you know, and I ate and I went and I did things. When I came back, it had cleared. But I thought that was so interesting and so relevant, because a lot of what's been coming up for me too is that, like, oh gosh, I'm crazy because I say things and people don't really understand what I'm saying, and they look at me funny and the energy gets weird, and I feel it, and then it's like weird every time I see them after that. And, you know, and it's just like, it doesn't matter. You know, that's one of the things that I'm clearing. Yeah, and so anyway, but that shit, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the throat and the Hathors, you know. And so a friend of mine was, she was in ceremony, and she was feeling all the overlays. This is a while, this is around the eclipses. Yep, this is around the eclipse time. I think it was. And she was feeling the overlays, and she you know, she was in an altered space, so she could see it all. And she was toning. She was toning, and she was using her voice, and she could see the frequency defragging that program. So the importance right now in the highlighting of our throat chakras, and this came up in this session as well with that wonderful woman. And so it was like speaking out, trusting our oracle, trusting our goddess speak, whether you're a man and you're a woman, and having the barometer of our hearts tell us, that intuition of knowing, you know, we're not gonna speak when it's not right. Like if your throat's closing up with somebody, it's like, why bother, you know? But you're gonna know when it's time and where it's the right venue, and allowing that throat and that voice, because it's a frequency. The frequency, I've learned, is connected to that seventh dimensional energy, which is what creates form. So it's like the voice, the intention, how we're speaking, you know, claiming, you know, all my needs are met in abundance, or, you know, whatever it is, counterbalancing, using the voice and the affirmation as the antidote to whatever we're struggling with, knowing that sound, that frequency of the voice, and especially speaking it out loud, singing it, you know, speaking it with others, does creates form. It creates our reality. So that was an interesting message that just kind of slipped in there. I am at 51 minutes. I'm going to pull one more card, and so we get the star. So there it is. So there's, in the first deck I ever had, the Mother Piece, they describe this card as being held in the arms of the goddess. And so there it is. That's what we're coming back to. This coming out right after this Page of Wands, this new adventure. This new adventure, just an indicator, is very, very much that unification. The goddess coming back online, those codes, that knowing, that inner knowing that's been buried, we've been fragmented away from, turning back towards that and allowing it to guide us towards our next step on this adventure as we co-create together again in that telepathic network. We're all tuning into this. This is the one goddess. This is the one mind. This is the truth of reality. This is the abundance. Look at these cups just flowing and flowing and flowing, eternally flowing. That's the truth. That's our birthright. Is that a flamingo? Oh, that's funny. I've been having a little bit of synchronicity with flamingo recently. Flamingo. I remember in the animal tarot, the flamingo is embrace the in-between. I think that's what it is, embrace. So there might be a little bit of a message with that as well, because we definitely are in between with that threshold. But this being on the other side, that true birthright, where we're coming out of the slave programs, we're coming out of being in debt to everything and having to, like, you know, jump through hoops and, you know, ignore our, you know, our soul guidance, ignore our connection to all it is, so that we can play this fucking game. And we're just getting out of it. We're coming back into that truth. And look at this, you know, like magic that comes out when our own soul essence flows in the way that it's meant to. Look at the magic that we create, reenacting the waters, the sacred waters. We are those sacred waters, and the water, and again, using the water as assistance, not only in that meditation and allowing things to flow, but also in programming our water and thanking the water. The other day, because I program my water and I always change it up, but I found myself thanking it for its honesty. And I was like, honesty, and I'm like, exactly, the water is honest, it's real, it has that crystalline codex, it has that divine balance, and divine harmony and divine balance, and so, you know, again, you know, leaning into the truth codes, leaning into nature, leaning into our crystals, leaning into the water, leaning into our DNA, you know, our activating DNA, leaning into all of it, and again, like this, you know, choosing what you want. That's the guidance, you know, choosing the highest timeline, not like, oh, you know, and we can do smaller things too, like, may I sleep tonight, you know, or you know, whatever it is, right? Show me what to say, help me see what I need to see, hear what I need to hear, feel what I need to feel. But even those things of like, help me back into the garden, help me have the courage to go on the other side of that boundary and into this realm that we've been scared away from, and knowing that it's waiting for us, and that it is us, and that we are it, and that we're creating it, and all the magic that awaits for us on the other side of this threshold. So I think I'm going to stop there. So thank you again. Thank you again for listening, and hang in there in those moments where you just feel that maddening tremble. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. And no, you're not alone in that. No, again, like I started with that telepathic network, there's a whole group of us in there. We are, you know, that tribe. We are the tribe that is bringing these sacred waters, the truth of the waters and the feminine, and all it is our birthright, bringing it back online. But we have to go through these crunches, and we have to be fearless, and really we have no choice, because we're just being, you know, we're being pushed over that edge. But this is what we're being pushed into. So yeah, just knowing you're not alone, and knowing that you're more than equipped for this. If you are feeling the intensity of this energy, then you are a front runner, and you've trained for this throughout your soul journey, and you've got this, and we all have it. And leaning into each other as well, the living waters between us, and knowing that it's a network, and we're here, you know, we're here to assist, and we're not alone. So all right, much love to you, and I'll see you next time if I do.